is a new song breaking out from the children of freedom. Every race and every nation, sing it out, sing a new hallelujah. Yeah.
Welcome to weekdaychurch.com. Today we're looking at the second of the big three theistic worldviews or theistic religions that you're going to see out there. Yesterday we talked some about Islam. You might know a little bit about it. This was far from any detail about what Islam is. In fact, it was just how Islam is different than the Christian worldview. Today it's going to be the same kind of thing. A little touch on what is Judaism and a connection here of how it is very different from Christianity in its worldview. And you say, well, what is a worldview? A worldview are the lenses that we have in our lives that are sort of how we see the world around us. It's our view of the world, our view for the world. And again, like if you were to put on rose-colored glasses, the whole world looks rose-colored. If you put on orange-colored glasses, the whole world looks orange. And this is the idea. We have a way we see the world around us, and it makes us different than other people in our lives. And it changes the way we see this world. Religion is, of course, part of this. And that's some of what we're going to be talking about today is these theistic worldviews. Those who have a belief that there's a God out there and an afterlife and a holy book and things are going to have a little bit of a different worldview than if you don't. Or if you think the whole world's spiritual and you have a God in you and you are a God. It changes the way you look at the world. You say, why are Hindus, why is it so different in India with Hinduism than it is in America with Christianity or than it was in USSR with atheism? Why is there such a vast difference in that? Or why is America changing so much as we've moved from more of a Christian type nation, of a Christian worldview, and farther away from that into more of an atheistic type of worldview? Why is it has changed our country. We have changed laws. We have changed the way we've done many things because your worldview really changes what you do because it changes your beliefs and value system behind it. So today as we're looking at Judaism, we're going to start with a video about what is Judaism. We're just seeing the first part of the clip, but I think it's going to be a very good teaching, and I'll talk to you a little bit with the commentary right after.
Of all the monotheistic religions in the world, Judaism is the oldest. It is the mother of Christianity and of Islam as well. All of the basic ideas and moral values of Western civilization are based upon Judaism. Judaism is unlike Christianity and Islam because it does not actively proselytize anyone. Judaism believes that all human beings have a share in the world to come. You don't have to be a Jew to get into heaven. Christianity puts a bar. You have to believe in Jesus. Islam says you have to believe in Muhammad. Judaism says basically you have to be a good person. There are 7 basic Noahide laws: not to steal, not to kill, not to be immoral, to have a system of laws, not to mistreat animals, to believe in God. That's the basic idea of being a human being. Judaism is therefore a universal religion without being a proselytizing religion. On the other hand, Judaism is also a particular religion. It affects Jews, and it gives Jews a lot of daily ritual, commandments, dietary laws, the Sabbath. All of these things pertain to Jews. Jews are meant to be, so to speak, the influential moral force in the world.
As you look at what is Judaism and you watch this clip, you're going to see the idea of the things that he said is there are 2 sides of Judaism. Now, if you want to research this, you'll see this even more. There's Judaism for the Jews, and then there's Judaism for the non-Jews. He called it a worldwide religion. He said, in Christianity, and again, he made a big difference here. He saw it as a different worldview between the other 2 big theistic religions too. They were the 2 he mentioned, Christianity and Islam. He says we're different than Christianity because we are not particular. You could be a Jew and be Jewish. You could be a non-Jew and be Jewish. You don't even have to proselytize to be Jewish. You can still go to Jewish heaven and everything, even without being Jewish. He said, it's not a big deal. There's another sort of set of books if you're not a Jew. He said, but to be a Christian, you have to believe in Jesus Christ. To be a Muslim, you have to believe in Muhammad. To be a Jew, you just have to believe in God. But did you catch something else that he put in there? That whether you're Jewish or whether you're not Jewish, it is a works-based religion. So is Islam. The only way they could know for sure, 100% guarantee that they were going to heaven in Islam, is that they died a holy martyr. That's a pretty select group, actually. And then everybody else will just sort of be weighed according to the laws of Islam. And, and hopefully God will be gracious and merciful, but, we'll be weighed according to those laws. And were you good enough? Because just being a Muslim isn't good enough. You've got to be the right kind of Muslim. And are you a good enough Muslim? And they never have a security that they've done enough, that they're close enough to God, that they know for sure they'll be going to heaven when they die. They could be found on the scale, they could be put on the scales and be found wanting very easily. Judaism goes along that same thing. As much as he was very positive about it being a religion that's open to everybody, he was saying, you have to believe in God. You cannot steal. You cannot steal. You can look up the Noetic laws. In other words, the laws that were given by God to Noah and his people, long before there were any given to Abraham, any given to Moses, or anything like that. Pre-Judaism that relates to the whole world. And what they're saying, and it's true, I agree with this, is that through Adam or later through Noah, the whole world had been given, this is how I want you to live. And it related to everybody because everybody came from these people. And then more specifically, the Jews came up with their own laws of what it meant to be a good Jew. I get exactly what they're saying with that. He says, and the thing is, we don't have to be evangelistic. We are a non-evangelistic religion. Wow. Because why? Well, if you aren't a Jew, you don't have to become a Jew. I don't think that was God's point. I don't think he wanted to set them out as only being special and holy and separate, which he did for themselves, though. I mean, this is made very clear throughout the Old Testament that they were to be a missionary race of people. They were a holy priesthood. They were to reach around the world, like how Jonah was to go up to Nineveh and tell them about God. If all it was to be was, well, they've got a different set of rules than we do, then fine. They either live by them or they don't. Why should I go out there and tell them about God? That when they were down in Egypt, that the way the Egyptians, they believed in gods, but that the way the Egyptians were doing it was wrong, and that Moses again and the Jews that were there and Joseph before him were supposed to make a difference on their lives. Daniel, around Nebuchadnezzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in that kingdom were supposed to make a missionary difference over there. Now that God's people were around the people that didn't know God, they were to make a difference and be salt and light in the world, as Jesus called it. That when Esther and Mordecai were in Persia, that they were to make a difference in Persia. And after the diaspora and the Jews were spread all over the world, that they were to take God with them wherever they went and make a difference, and not just say, well, if you're not Jewish, well, then you're just not going to be, and you just live according to your own laws. Believe in God and do good. But there's more than believe in God and do good. But then what he said is, once you're a Jew, it is a very ritualistic religion. Sabbath laws, food laws, clothing laws, farming laws. It is a very law-based religion. And yes, they believe that God has grace, just like in Islam, but there's no real definition of how much it is and how to get in on it. It is a believe in God and do good. But have you done enough good? Are you sure you're set? Are you good enough to make it okay with God? When it's weighed on the scales, how do you know if you've done enough? Should you give a little more? Should you live a little better? Should you, give up more of your life? Should you be a little more holy? Are you sure there's enough? Because there's always room to grow. Each of us knows just how imperfect we are. And again, when you put these glasses of Judaism on, when you put on this worldview, it could be very daunting. And you say, well, how do you know this? Jesus, remember, was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. Jesus, more than any person in there, talks about all this. More than Paul, more than Peter, more than any Christian. Jesus talks to the Jews because that's whom he was sent to. It was his people. But it says that he was sent as the Messiah to his own people, and his own people did not overall accept him. Some did, but overall his own people accepted him not. Their own Savior that was sent to them, they didn't accept because they were proud of their laws. They were proud of being individual country and people that were unique and better than everyone else, and not using that as a difference to say God has made us holy and a royal priesthood and a royal nation to go out there and change the world for God, but to be special ourselves and have our own good lives. And it did not answer their questions. And when Jesus came and said there is a better way, and what you have made this is about laws, and you don't even keep them. You talk about all these good things, but then you steal the homes from widows. That's not very good. You say you must honor your parents, but then you go to the temple and say, well, I don't have to do it anymore. I've made a vow and I don't have to love my parents anymore. He says, the traditions of men have taken over from God. For instance, now, there was no electricity when God wrote the Bible. There was just, it was there, but we hadn't used it. Now, if you turn on a light switch on the Sabbath, they say you're working on the Sabbath. On the other hand, if you leave the lights on all day, that's okay, because it's not working on the Sabbath. If you have a donkey that falls in a pit in the Sabbath and you pull him out of the pit on the Sabbath, that's not work. But if you feed the donkey on the Sabbath, that's work. This is not from the Bible. This is just laws of man. Why? Because when you try to say I can be good enough for God, you start creating your own rules to show God how great you are, and often to show others how great you are. This worldview was made for one big reason. It's very clear in the Old Testament. To prepare us for Jesus Christ. Everything in the Old Testament, Moses was the first writer of the Old Testament. Everything in the Old Testament, Moses said, wait for the one that is coming, who will be like me, and will be the one who leads you out of captivity and into God's freedom. And when he comes, listen to every word he says. That's from the very Pentateuch, that we are to be waiting for the Messiah. If you were to ask the Jews today, most all of them know that they are waiting for the Messiah to come. But sadly, he already came. And he was their Messiah, and our Messiah too, thank God. And that he came, and that he's there. But the good news is this. God still loves the Jews. God loves all of us, but God still has a place for them. And the great news about this for the Jews, the sad news starts is this. When the Antichrist comes and he sets peace with Israel, they will think he is their Messiah. But when he betrays them, they will be at the lowest point they've ever been. Worse than Nebuchadnezzar, worse than Rome, worse than Hitler. But God says that he will protect them, and he will save them, and he will keep them safe, and that all Israel will be saved, and that they will all recognize the one they pierced one day. It'll be the greatest revival we've ever heard of, when an entire nation of Israel comes to God and recognizes that Jesus Christ was their Messiah, and that they walk with him during the millennial reign, and reign with him, and he reigns from Jerusalem for 1,000 years. What a time we are waiting for that. Our closing song will be a beautiful Jewish song. It's called Shema Yisrael. I hope that it's an encouragement to you. It's a very pretty song. It's from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9, which is called the Shema in the Jewish religion. It's also in the Christian Bible too, obviously in the Old Testament. I hope it blesses you. Of course, tomorrow we will be talking about Christianity. We will continue some of this philosophy as we go into the next week too. Thank you for joining us. Please join us tomorrow as we close this section off.
Shema Yisrael